The Atma, its Bondage and Freedom, Part 2. Suppose there is a ball in this room, and we each have a mallet in our hands and begin to strike the ball, giving it hundreds of blows, driving it from point to point until at last it flies out of the room. With what force and in what direction will it go out? These will be determined by the forces that have been acting upon it all through the room. All the different blows that have been given will have their effects. Each one of our actions, mental and physical, is such a blow. The human mind is a ball which is being hit. We are being hit about this room of the world all the time, and our passage out of it is determined by the forces of all these blows. In each case, the speed and direction of the ball is determined by the hits it has received, so all our actions in this world will determine our future birth. Our present birth, therefore, is the result of our past. This is one case. Suppose I give you an endless chain in which there is a black link and a white link alternately, without beginning and without end, and suppose I ask you the nature of this chain. At first, you will find a difficulty in determining its nature, the chain being infinite at both ends, but slowly you will find out that it is a chain. You soon discover that this infinite chain is a repetition of the two links, black and white, and these multiplied infinitely become a whole chain. If you know the nature of one of these links, you know the nature of the whole chain because it is a perfect repetition. All our lives, past, present, and future, form, as it were, an infinite chain, without beginning and without end, each link of which is one life with two ends, birth and death. What we are and do here is being repeated again and again, but with little variation. So if we know these two links, we shall know all the passages we shall have to pass through in this world. We see therefore that our passage into this world has been exactly determined by our previous passages. Similarly, we are in this world by our own actions. Just as we go out with the sum total of our present actions upon us, so we see that we come into it with the sum total of our past actions upon us. That which takes us out is the very same thing that brings us in. What brings us in? Our past deeds. What takes us out? Our own deeds here, and so on and on we go. Like the caterpillar that takes the thread from its own mouth and builds its cocoon and at last finds itself caught inside the cocoon, we have bound ourselves by our own actions. We have thrown the work of our actions around ourselves. We have set the law of causation in motion, and we find it hard to get ourselves out of it. We have set the wheel in motion, and we are being crushed under it. So this philosophy teaches us that we are uniformly being bound by our own actions, good or bad. The Atma never comes or goes, is never born nor dies. It is nature moving before the Atma, and the reflection of this motion is on the Atma, and the Atma ignorantly thinks it is moving and not nature. When the Atma thinks that it is in bondage, but when it comes to find it never moves, that it is omnipresent, then freedom comes. The Atma in bondage is called Jiva. Thus you see that when it is said that the Atma comes and goes, it is said only for facility of understanding, just as for convenience in studying astronomy, you are asked to suppose that the sun moves around the earth, though it is not the case. So the Jiva, the soul, comes to higher or lower states. This is well-known law of reincarnation, and this law binds all creation. People in this country think it is too horrible that man should come up from an animal. Why? What will be the end of these millions of animals? Are they nothing? If we have a soul, so have they, and if they have none, neither have we. It is absurd to say that man alone has a soul and the animals none. I have seen men worse than animals. The human soul is sojourned in lower and higher forms, migrating from one to another according to the samskaras or impressions. But it is only in the highest form as man that it attains to freedom. The man form is higher than even the angel form, and of all the forms it is the highest. Man is the highest being in creation because he attains to freedom. All this universe was in Brahman, and it was, as it were, projected out of him. And it has been moving on to go back to the source from which it has projected. Like the electricity which comes out of the dynamo, completes the circuit and returns to it. The same is the case with the soul. Projected from Brahman, it passed through all sorts of vegetable and animal forms, and at last it is in man. And man is the nearest approach to Brahman. To go back to Brahman from which we have been projected is the great struggle of life. Whether people know it or not does not matter. In the universe, whatever we see of motion, of struggles in minerals or plants or animals is an effort to come back to the center and be at rest. There was an equilibrium and that has been destroyed, and all parts and atoms and molecules are struggling to find their lost equilibrium again. In this struggle, they are combining and reforming, giving rise to all the wonderful phenomena of nature. All struggles and competitions in animal life, plant life, and everywhere else, all social struggles and wars are but expressions of that eternal struggle to get back to that equilibrium. The going from birth to death, this traveling, is what is called samskara in Sanskrit, the round of birth and death, literally. All creation passing through this round will sooner or later become free. The question may be raised that if we all shall come to freedom, why should we struggle to attain it? If everyone is going to be free, we will sit down and wait. It is true that every being will become free sooner or later. No one can be lost. Nothing can come to destruction. Everything must come up. If that is so, what is the use of our struggling? In the first place, the struggle is the only means that will bring us to the center. And in the second place, we do not know why we struggle. We have to. Of thousands of men, some are awakened to the idea that they will become free. The vast masses of mankind are content with material things. But there are some who awake and want to get back, who have had enough of this playing down here. These struggle consciously, while the rest do it unconsciously.